Those kind words. Hi everyone, welcome. Congratulations to all of the 2025 Women of Influence. What a beautiful and well-deserved accomplishment, all of you. I want to take you back a few years to late summer 2018. I was breastfeeding on a Zoom call. I was literally trying to mute my tears while leading a quarterly business review. And all I could think was, I have no idea who this is, who I am. Before motherhood, I was a marketing leader in tech, helping millionaires make more millions. I had a great job, I was on the fast track, I was going up the ladder, and I deeply identified with my ambition. And when I got pregnant in 2017, I planned my return literally like a campaign launch. 12 weeks off, read all the business books I didn't have time to read, and then I'd be right back into it. I would bounce back. But what happened was not a disruption. It wasn't a 12-week break. It was a disintegration. I returned to work 11 weeks postpartum, which seems kind of great. Exhausted. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in the past 3 months. In the midst of postpartum, I had barely stopped bleeding. And unsurprisingly, I was wildly unprepared for the identity collapse that I was experiencing. I was crying between meetings. I questioned whether I was fit to be a parent, and I honestly contemplated the value of my life. I loved my child, sure, but I felt completely lost to myself. I had no idea who I was. And back at work, even in a progressive tech company with all of the perks and the 12-week parental leave, I was met with confusion and silence about my transition back to work. There was no transition plan, there was no playbook, there was no precedent. And as it turns out, I later learned I was the first birthing parent in a leadership position in the company's 10-year history. And that stuck with me. I realized I had support on paper, but not in practice, and definitely not in culture. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just personal, it's systemic. I began questioning everything, my career, my identity, my ambitions. I didn't want the life I had hustled thus far for, but I didn't know what I wanted instead. And I learned a word I had never heard before, matrescence. Has anybody heard this word? Feel? Matrescence is a psychological, hormonal, emotional, and social transformation of becoming a mother. Liken it to puberty, like adolescence, but for moms. And it explained everything I was feeling. But no one had ever said it to me. I actually didn't learn it until 2022, after the birth of my daughter. And certainly no one had prepared me for this transition. And what followed was like a slow unraveling of the falsely held beliefs about who I was. In coaching, I felt what it was like to be held without performing. And in therapy, I realized that my hustle had actually been my mask. And during the pandemic in 2020, when everything literally was on pause, I stopped trying to bounce back. And in that pause, I started listening. And it was in this quiet that I heard this voice whisper to me, "Coach, support moms. This is the work." And that whisper changed everything. I became an evidence-based coach. I left my marketing job and I rebuilt my career. I redefined success, not as performance, not as KPIs, but as alignment. Alignment with who I am, what I value, the world I believe in, the mission I serve. I didn't just return to who I was, I rose as someone new. And now I coach high-capacity moms through the exact transitions I once felt alone in. I help medical departments and companies build systems that actually support caregivers. And I advocate for policy change because, again, the issue isn't personal, it's systemic. And here's what I know. Resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about burning down what no longer fits and rising into what does. So if you are in your own season of unraveling, if you're staring at a life that no longer feels true, If you're staring at a part of your life that no longer feels true, this is your invitation. Listen to your intuition. Listen to that gut. That whisper might know something that maybe your resume doesn't. Make space to realign, not just with what you do, but who you are. And trust that when something falls apart, it's not always the end. Perhaps it's just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Coral, for reminding us that becoming someone new isn't about losing ourselves. It's about finding who we were always meant to be. Now, let's celebrate our 2025 Mainline Parents